Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. The reigning national champions, the Georgia Bulldogs, come in at number 3 in our way too early top 25. And if you're Georgia, you couldn't have asked for a better 2021 season. How can you get any better than that? Your first national title since 1980, going 14-1, finally defeating Alabama 33-18 in that national championship game. And going into 2022, Georgia will once again be a national title favorite and once again seem to be the clear-cut favorite in the SEC East. So guys, today we are here to break down their entire schedule, their road back to the college football playoff, the road back to maybe being an SEC champion, although they didn't win it last year. Doesn't matter. Still got the natty. And of course, we're going to take a look at their brief outlook for 2022 as well. So before we get started, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. And again, become a part of our Gridiron Expert team. Become a part of the GE Nation. And you can do that by just hitting that like button, by leaving a comment, by subscribing to us, guys. We provide you with college football content year-round. Here in a few months, we're going to be doing game-by-game predictions for every single team. And yes, that includes the Georgia Bulldogs. So if you love college football, this is the place for you. So become a part of our team and help this channel grow. So we take a look at Georgia, guys. Again, national champions. First time since 1980. Got over that Bama curse. Had fallen short time and time again, whether it was in SEC championship games, regular season games, didn't matter. They fell short in this last SEC championship game. Got annihilated by the Tide, but they got their revenge in the game that mattered the most. And now going into 2022, as we just mentioned, Georgia is a national title favorite. Again, they're a top 3 team for us, 3rd ranked team in the country, and they are an absolute playoff contender. Stetson Bennett returns to lead the offense at quarterback, and for some fans, that's a good thing. For some fans, that's a bad thing. A lot of people criticize Stetson Bennett for his play. They criticize Kirby Smart for playing Stetson Bennett as much as he did. But regardless, Bennett is a veteran quarterback. He knows the system well, and he did just lead the Bulldogs to a national title. He does have that experience, and that's going to be huge for Georgia on offense, considering how much the Bulldogs lose from a historic defense. One of the best defenses that we've ever seen in college football. They lose guys like Trayvon Walker, the freak of nature in Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, Nakobe Dean. Lose a lot of key starters from that defense where, yes, we know that Georgia, with the way they've recruited and the talent that they still have, are still going to have a solid defense. But that's a lot of talent, a lot of key pieces to replace, which makes your title defense a lot more difficult. A lot more difficult. But we do have faith in Kirby Smart to obviously replenish that, to coach him up. And we have faith in Kirby Smart to get Georgia back to the college football playoff. And we look at the schedule, guys, the path to the playoff is not horrible for Georgia. It's really not. And we could easily see another situation like last year where if Georgia goes in to that SEC championship game undefeated, it's not going to matter if they win or lose the title game to Alabama or someone like that from the West, because they're obviously so good that one loss isn't going to keep them out. Georgia goes into the SEC championship game and undefeated, they're a lock for the playoff, no doubt about it, just like they were last year. But you look at the schedule, guys, they opened the year up against Oregon. So the second year in a row that Georgia has had a big marquee matchup in the first week of the season. Last year it was Clemson and Charlotte, and the Bulldogs won that game 10-3. This year they take on Oregon in Atlanta. So obviously going to have a lot of Bulldogs fans there anyways. Also an interesting matchup here because Dan Lanning, Georgia's defensive coordinator last year, is now the head coach at Oregon. So that's going to be a very fun matchup there for Lanning to face off against his former team. Could easily see this game between two strong defenses being another low-scoring game, just like that Georgia-Clemson game was back in 2021. This is a great opportunity for a top 15 matchup for Georgia to get a resume-boosting win right out of the gate. Great opportunity to see what this Georgia team is made of, especially with all the key losses. Great opportunity to see what Oregon is made of. Is Oregon going to get that resume-boosting win, kind of like they did last year by beating Ohio State on the road? This is one of the more intriguing and more exciting Week 1 games of 2022, and I really couldn't think of anything better for this. Georgia, Oregon, two great defensive minds. Dan Lanning making his return. This is going to be a phenomenal game. No doubt about it. Georgia absolutely deserves and will be favored in this game, but this is a great opportunity to see what both teams are made of and really to set the tone for both these teams that are trying to not only win their conferences but also trying to get to the college football playoff. The Bulldogs then take on Samford. No big issues there. At South Carolina, this game's going to be a little bit more difficult than it has been in years past. Obviously, Columbia, not an easy place to play. Williams-Brice Stadium, especially at night, can be rocking. And Shane Beamer has just revitalized, re-energized his entire South Carolina fan base after a very surprising 2021. He's now added Spencer Rattler in as their quarterback. Expectations are very high in South Carolina. Maybe not as high as beating Georgia and winning the East, but enough to start contending again, kind of like they did with Steve Spurrier. This game at South Carolina is one that Georgia cannot afford to overlook, but they did beat the Gamecocks 40-13 last year. And despite the new additions, despite the new excitement, despite how well Shane Beamer has done, I still think the Gamecocks are a bit of a ways away. Again, not predicting anything though. Kent State to wrap up the month of September. So again, 2 tough games there with Oregon and South Carolina. Georgia does not get to ease into their season by any means. They then start getting into the bulk of SEC conference play, and they open up against Missouri. The bulk of it. Right now, South Carolina's the first one. They beat Missouri 43-6 last year. I don't see the Tigers as a threat. I see the Tigers at towards the bottom of the SEC East, along with Vanderbilt, because the East is drastically improving. Georgia's still at the top, but South Carolina has shown drastic improvement. Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, all those teams are showing improvement. The ones that seem to just kind of be towards the bottom are Missouri and Vanderbilt. So, despite the game being in Columbia, Missouri, Georgia shouldn't have any issues with them. You've got Auburn on October 8th. The Bulldogs get to host this game. They beat Auburn 34-10 last year. A lot of people thought the Tigers would give the Bulldogs a fight. They were unable to. Auburn dealing with a bunch of issues themselves. Have a couple of questions at quarterback. Had that weird Brian Harsin thing a couple months ago where Auburn clearly wanted him gone but could not get rid of him. You can't help but wonder how much those off-field issues are going to affect the Tigers going into 2022. Vanderbilt beat them 62-0 last year. Game is in Athens. Don't think we have to talk much on that. They get their bye week on October 22nd, and that's where Georgia enters their toughest stretch of the year. You know, we've been doing these toughest stretches for every single team that we've touched on in our top 25. And when you look at Georgia, their toughest stretch is from October 29th through November 19th. Those 4 games, where they take on Florida and Jacksonville, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Tennessee in Athens, at Mississippi State, and at Kentucky. They are taking on arguably their top 3 competitors in the East. You could sub in South Carolina for Florida if you don't believe Florida is going to be that good. But when you're ranking the top 3 teams, not necessarily in any order, but the top 3 teams in the East are Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And the Bulldogs have to face Tennessee and Kentucky in a 3-week span. If you want to throw in Florida in there, you have to face 3 of those teams in a 4-week span. So that's where things get interesting. They take on Florida and Jacksonville. They beat the Gators 34-7 last year, and you don't really know what to expect of the Gators this year. They've got a lot of questions to answer themselves. Brand new head coach in Billy Napier. They're going to have to work through some issues, and we're not quite sure if Florida's ready to take the step to, and I know they did a few years ago under Dan Mullen, the step to start really competing with Georgia in the SEC East, at least right now. They take on Tennessee. This is a Tennessee team that we believe is a top 25 team to start the year, has an unbelievable offense, and this is a Tennessee team that could challenge Georgia a little bit if the Bulldogs' defense isn't up to par, isn't what we expect it to be, or definitely takes a major step back from the one we saw last year. Let's keep in mind that Tennessee, I believe, was beating Georgia at halftime last year at Neyland Stadium before Georgia really turned it on the second half, ran away, won the game 41-17. But from a statistical standpoint, Tennessee was one of the few teams that was able to exploit Georgia's defense from a statistical standpoint. Tennessee and Alabama were really the only teams that could put up the most numbers on Georgia's defense from last year. Tennessee returns the majority of their offense. They're going to be loaded this year. And if the game was in Knoxville, a lot of people could be saying this could be the trap game where Georgia loses. But home field advantage might play a key role in this game. They take on Mississippi State out of the West, so they only get Auburn and Mississippi State out of the West. They avoid Alabama, they avoid LSU, avoid Ole Miss, Arkansas, guys like that. Mississippi State, air raid offense. This is one that in Starkville isn't going to be easy by any means, but one that if you have a great defensive mind, like Kirby Smart is, the air raid is an offense and a scheme that, as we've seen in the recent years, isn't most difficult to stop. So should test Georgia's defense once again. Should be an intriguing matchup there. Mississippi State lives up to their hype, but not one that not as big of a West game as Georgia could have gotten. And then finally, Kentucky. Kentucky's a team that is loaded with talent. Will Levis back at quarterback. Chris Rodriguez back at running back. That could be a game that could ultimately decide who wins the SEC East if Kentucky lives up to their hype, if Tennessee lives up to their hype. Again, Georgia is without a doubt the undisputed clear favorite, but the East could very well be decided based on how Tennessee, Kentucky, and Georgia all fare against one another. Georgia has to travel to Lexington. They beat the Wildcats 30-13 last year. Kentucky got that late touchdown. It's like time expired just to get over the double-digit mark. But this is a Kentucky team that, again, is no slouch and easily could win 9 or 10 games in 2022. No doubt about it. Georgia cannot afford to overlook it with the game being on the road. A couple years ago, we saw Georgia and Kentucky face off in the SEC East Championship game, and the Bulldogs torch the Wildcats in that game. Not saying we're going to be in for a similar result, but I still feel there's a significant talent gap between the Bulldogs and everyone else in their division. They closed the year out with Georgia Tech. They beat the Yellow Jackets 45-0 last year. This very well could be the last year for Jeff Collins in Atlanta. Very disappointing 2021, and things don't seem to be getting too much better for him in 2022. Georgia absolutely owns their state. Don't see much of a competition coming from the Yellow Jackets. So there you go, guys. Georgia's schedule, again, is not that bad. Their toughest test come later on in the year. Oregon is no slouch. South Carolina is no slouch. But the bigger conference games come in that 4-game stretch we just mentioned when they play Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Group Mississippi State in there if you want. But from an Eastern standpoint, it's Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky. October 29th through November 19th will ultimately define Georgia's season. But guys, again, despite the losses on defense, despite a handful of losses on offense, this is a Georgia team that is loaded once again. One of the best coaches in the game in Kirby Smart. It's going to build up that defense again. They've got the talent to do it. They've got the schedule to do it. Don't be surprised to see Georgia back in Atlanta for the SEC Championship game, where, again, if they are undefeated, or maybe even if they're just a one-loss team, they will practically be a college football playoff lock. This is a team that should find themselves back in the Final Four, not just really just from everywhere. From the schedule and from the talent that they have, they should find themselves back in the college football playoff. That has become the standard now down in Athens. Anything less than that would be viewed as a disappointment. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. Again, we want you to become a part of our Gridiron Expert team. Become a part of the GE Nation. You can do that by just hitting that subscribe button, hitting that like button, so you can continue to help our channel grow. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.